The Sciforror Film Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Sciforror Film Podcast. I have with me today Jonathan Zaurin, who is the man responsible for the film Wyvern Hill, which has been renamed Hollow for some reason, best known to the marketing people. And
Yeah.
as you will know, anybody out there will know that I have a very soft spot for this film. I really enjoy it. So hello, Jonathan, thank you for joining me.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, it really is. Now let's start off with a bit of background. How did you get into the whole thing of filmmaking?
That's a tough question. That's pretty much what I always wanted to do. I think I remember being age 6 and thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to make films. So it actually never changed. Like even people I went to primary school with probably would say, oh, you always used to say you wanted to make films, you know. And I made my first short when I was around 19. It was rubbish, as a first short should be, you know.
Yeah.
And then I went on and I did a documentary feature film in the Sahara Desert, and I moved to the UK and I basically started again. I did my BA in filmmaking, and that gave me a sort of platform to be able to build a portfolio and make some short films and essentially arrive to the point where I wanted and felt ready to make a fiction feature film. Yeah.
Cool. Now, I, as anybody who's been following the podcast knows, I had the pleasure of seeing your film at the Romford Horror Film Festival, and
Yeah.
It blew me away. I still honestly think it was very difficult to choose for me between Wyvern Hill and Manfish. I think that the thing about it is they're two very different types of films.
Yes. Totally.
But I would say those two were definitely the best features for the entire.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed Manfish. Actually, I thought it was very funny. But obviously, it's a very different film from Wyvern Hill. You know, very different.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, the making of Wyvern Hill. Now, let's get something out of the way first of all. Why? What's with the name change?
I mean, the mysteries of distribution. I assume that as per everything they've incorporated in the strategy is they were aiming at the American market, and that a wyvern might not mean much to an American market. But at the age of Google, I'm pretty sure people can Google what a wyvern is. Their official reason is they wanted the title was too long. Wyvern Hill is apparently too long, 2 words. They wanted 1 word for some reason, which ended up costing us more, because when you deliver an indie film to a distributor, you're supposed to deliver it with all the paperwork and the legalities done. And one of these things is a title search, and you have to pay a certain amount for a title search. And obviously, the more common the title is, the more expensive it is. And Hollow. Yeah, you can't make much more generic title, really.
I mean, to be honest, if I was looking at it, Wyvern Hill, even if I didn't know what Wyvern was, it's the name of a place. So surely that's, I'm sure nobody said that when they made the Amityville Horror.
Also, it's stupid. It's stupid because I think the word hill in the context of horror has got something quite
Yeah.
threatening and moody, and yeah, I mean, it's almost a tradition to have the word hill in a horror
Well, I mean,
title.
the first thing that comes to mind is like Silent Hill, the
Yeah.
games and the films and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a very I think it's a very strange thing to do, and
It's a completely stupid decision, and actually that's in my mind to this day, that and the poster is literally what kind of sabotaged our release, really.
yeah. I mean, was it their thing of changing the poster or the advertising
Yeah.
thing for it completely?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the poster that you have now is actually the second poster.
Right.
The first poster was even probably worse. Probably. And I was honest from the start, and I said I didn't like it. I objected to the title. Unfortunately, once you sign as a distributor, that's that. And it took about a year for the release to actually happen, between the time we delivered the film and the time that it was actually released to the US. Currently, it's only released in the US, I think, still. But to be honest, it's been a very rocky year, where I've had about a year to accept the fact that we were going to be trashed when we were going to come out. I knew it. I wish I'd say I was prepared. I was not, because you're never prepared for the amount of hate that you're going to receive. But I knew it was going to happen.
I don't understand. I mean, well, it's difficult for me because I really like the film, and I've now watched it twice, and I've really enjoyed it both times. But I don't understand why there is so much hate about it, because not trying to put you down or the film down or anything in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes down to it, it's only a film. Why so much hate?
For me, there's multiple reasons, and obviously it's kind of difficult to make assumptions on things like that, and you don't want to assume that it's never the film. I'm sure some people genuinely didn't like the film for what it was, and that's fine. We knew not everybody was going to like it, but I think there is definitely a huge part of not reaching the right target for it and reaching the wrong target all at the same time. Because I can imagine that if I didn't know what kind of film it is, and I found Hollow with that cover, and then I put that in, and what I end up is a sort of weird British giallo with surreal tones and a completely puzzle box kind of structure where nothing is explained, I would be pretty pissed off. And that's what we're noticing. What we're noticing is it's not so much negative reviews, it is pissed off reviews. Like, people hate you, they hate your guts. They hate your guts for what you've done. And so, there's a kind of, in fact, I think the first, because I was obviously, you're trying not to, but when the film was released, I kept an eye on IMDb, and I shouldn't have probably, but the first review that came up is from somebody literally ripping into us for that poster, saying, look at these people ripping off Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. They think we forgot about Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. And you go, well, first of all, dude, I'm not responsible for that poster. That's not my poster. I didn't ask for that poster. I didn't ask for that title. Secondly, the film is not that poster. So there's a whole thing on that. And the other thing is that I think the distributor did their best to completely delete the fact that it's an indie movie and it's a £5,000 indie movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the whole thing. I mean, it's an indie movie made on a shoestring budget for a film, for the film type of film it is. And to be honest, I think quality wise, for the amount of money you spent on it, it's fantastic.
Yeah. But I think that's where it gets tricky, is that plays against us.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that because the film is sold the way it is, people they don't care that it costs £5,000, and they don't know that it costs £5,000. So when they look at it, they don't necessarily suspect that it costs £5,000. They think it cost $1 million or $500,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they rip into you the way that they would rip into a studio movie, and you go, hang on, this is something that I carried with both my arms. I sweated over it, with my little tiny crew of 5 people. And we managed to get that tiny film out in the public eye where it should have never been. It ended up on Bloody Disgusting and on Joe Blow and all these things. And it's like,
yeah,
wait a minute, this is a tiny movie. And so because of that post, so you take all these things together and you take that poster and you take that title. And so the people that should love this film, so the people who love Giallo, who love Euro cult, who love surreal horror, who love arty horror, none of them are going to take an interest in horror at all. The people that love the trashier, not that there's anything wrong with it, because I love it as well, side of horror, go to horror and they're not getting what they want. And again, I'm sure there is a ton of people out there who see the movie for what it is and they don't like it, and that's totally fine. But it's just that constant torrent of hate that we took since the film got released. It's been brutal. It has been absolutely brutal.
I mean, I honestly feel like I know this sounds ridiculous because it's not me doing it, but I feel like I should apologize to you because I just don't think you deserve it at all. I just,
On the other hand, there has been people like you who have supported the film massively. You understood the film. You got the film. Part of what makes me think that something isn't happening is also I've read all the negative reviews, and I'm yet to find a genuinely negative review where I go, right, this is someone who really thought about this and they hated it, and here's why. I haven't found one like that yet. And I'd almost like to at this stage, because at least, I could have a reasonable conversation. I did have a conversation with someone on YouTube who hated the film, and my decision was to keep it cool and keep it calm and just get to the bottom of it. And, it turned out that when I explained what kind of film it was, that person was actually fairly impressed by the look of the film and what it looked like and what it felt like. And
as I say, I mean, to be honest, I think for the amount of money that you spent on it, I think the quality of the film is really quite incredible. It's excellent. It's really good. It's a very well made film, and it's a very well acted film. And that's kind of another thing. I feel that the negative attacks and all that sort of thing really detract from the fact that you have got some really good actors in this film. They did an incredible job.
Yeah, and even then, they took a beating as well. Pat is pretty much the only one who got away fairly safely, but everybody else got stuff thrown at them, and you go, none of them deserve it. They've all been really good. I think the part of the issue is that because we're aiming for something a little bit surreal, a little bit unreal, a little bit wrong, then everything comes across a little bit weird, a little bit wrong, a little bit off. But that's the actors delivering what they're supposed to deliver. It's not them being awful or being bad or anything like that. And I can't understand that criticism being leveled at them at all.
No. I mean, to be honest, I think the thing for me is that straight away with the film, as soon as I started watching it became apparent to me that there were a lot of layers to the film. There were a lot of levels of things going on, and it was a matter of unraveling the layers, because of the fact that there were parts where it was difficult to tell what was real, what was in her imagination, what was just the kind of, it was really difficult to tell exactly what was going on. But it was done in such a way that it made it interesting, and I wanted to know what was going on and what was happening. I wanted to find out more, so it made me want to watch more, because it has got the multiple layers of there's so much going on in this film.
That was always the idea for me, is that if you're going to make a film about somebody who's suffering from Alzheimer, then cinema is always about point of view, And I think at the core of the problem of what's not happening with the audience that we're reaching now is there's a lot of people who consider cinema as something that is plot driven. So driven by plot. And that doesn't mean story. It's slightly different, because, building a plot and building a story, they're two different things. You can have, you know, a lot of European cinema, for example, has story, but it doesn't really have a plot. It's about characters and it's about character development and all that stuff. And to be honest, the problem with Wyvern Hill is it's not really about character development either. It's about point of view and sharing the point of view of someone who is suffering from Alzheimer. And so the whole film is designed that way, whether it's the color scheme or the way that it's edited, the way that it's shot. You know, a lot of the criticism that we've had is that the film feels a bit loose and a little bit disjointed.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, it is. That was on purpose. We wanted that. We wanted something that felt a little bit disjointed and a little bit loose, because if you're somebody who's suffering from Alzheimer, every moment feels disconnected. It feels a little bit loose. Nothing really makes sense in the way that it's put together. That's the point. But that absence of plot, I think, is what's caused a lot of rejection as well, because it's not about plot as such.
Interestingly, one of the things that struck me was listening to or reading some of the things that some of the people are saying, and as you say, people not understanding the complexities of it all and all that kind of thing. It reminded me a bit of a lot of the negative stuff that was leveled at Donnie Darko when that came out, because people just didn't understand the disjointed story, because it was, you know, and they think it's the same thing. I'm not putting people down with saying this, but I think
no, not at all.
Find it very difficult to. Some people find it very difficult to work with a narrative that's on more than one level.
Yes, and the issue with Wyvern Hill is the narrative. The real narrative is on no level almost, and that was always the point. Is we wanted things to come through most and foremost visually. So, for example, the color scheme is a really important thing, and some people would hate me for explaining my film actually, but that's fine. Yeah, I'll get hate whatever I do anyway. So, but the whole idea of the color scheme is twofold in a way. It's the Bava Argento thing where, you know, the hyper colorized, hyper stylized thing. But the other thing is that nothing is real for her.
Yeah.
And so everything becomes color. And those colors we've made sure that they're always in the frame representing the right things. So for example, we color coded the characters. So and I might be wrong because it's been 2 years now we shot it, but yellow is for Pete and Ellie,
right?
Blue is for Pat, and red is for Boris and Mr. Punch. And so each time that you get these colors in the space, the way that they are perceived, they mean something. The way that they mix together, the way that they blend together, the way that they work together means something. Now, I thought that, you know, provided you had a little bit of knowledge of Italian horror, that would be very obvious, because then all of a sudden you go, oh, hang on, so the Giallo killer is Alzheimer. The moment you get that, the film actually isn't that complicated once you got that thing. You know? And we did little things. One of the things that I explained is there's a scene where she's in a cafe, and that's the moment that she figures out something might be wrong with her mind. And it happens in two ways. The first is that her friend tells her, hang on, the husband you're talking to is dead, he's been dead a while. And she goes, well, hang on a minute. And as she says that, in the background, for people to pay attention, you can see Ben coming out of her head behind on the table, right there. He's writing, and we put it there. And there's a funny story there, and essentially at the same time that happens, her son-in-law discovers the house and it's completely empty. And at that moment, what you're supposed to understand with the editing is that her house is her mind space. Yeah. So you got these two things happening in that key moment. And once you've got these two things, the film makes complete sense. There is literally nothing to understand after that. It's just feel it. The funny thing that happened when we did that scene is I had Ben in a very striking position. And when we were shooting it, the cast and crew said to me, that's too much. It's going to be it's going to be ridiculous. People are just going to laugh, and it's going to be too obvious. I don't think it's going to be too obvious, and I was correct. Nobody even sees it. It's so strange, the way that it happens, and that's probably my fault. Maybe I should have done something more with it.
I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a certain amount of what went on in the film that for me was almost subliminal in a way, because it was kind of like you notice stuff, or rather you don't notice things happening.
Yeah.
But then a bit later on, you see things and you go, "Oh, right, that makes sense." You know.
Yeah.
But the thing about it that got me was that it was this thing of for me was the kind of looking at the real horror of being somebody undergoing that deterioration of your mind and your life, and that's real horror.
Yeah,
it's not fiction horror that any that a filmmaker can make, and that you can be put on TV or on screen, and that's real horror. That is the thing of losing your capability to be able to function as a human being the way you have. That's real horror.
And I think for me that's what I like about horror, and I with the release of this film I realized that we might not be in the majority here, but I like horror that stands for something, right? And I think we're slowly kind of losing that sort of allegorical power of horror. But here's the thing, right? Any genre is basically narrative conventions, codes, right? That's what they call it, codes. And it's called codes because the purpose is to decode, right? Once you understand what horror is, then you can make it stand for absolutely anything. If you go, oh, well, I'm going to make a giallo. Well, what's your giallo about? Well, it's about Alzheimer. Then it's really just 2 and 2. You go, well, the killer is literally just Alzheimer. That makes sense. And it's been done that way for decades. I mean, it's funny because people don't even think about it anymore. But if you look at Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, it's not really about zombies. The zombies stand for something. They mean something else. That allegorical power is what I really genuinely loved about horror, other than the fact that obviously it's fun to watch, and
Oh, I know. I mean, I must admit, I mean, the film I remember watching when I was younger, which really scared me, was The Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price, the Roger Corman film. And the thing that scared me most about that film was that at the beginning of that film, Vincent Price is this fairly kind of ordinary, almost timid sort of like guy, who then, as the film goes on, turns into this complete psychopath.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, oh my God, he could be anybody in the street, could turn into this sort of lunatic.
Yes.
And that was the thing that scared me more than anything, because it was like, it's not like, Jason, Freddy, people like that, they are characters that you can look at and you go, okay, they are things of nightmares and they are horrible and they are scary. But the fact that somebody who's just an ordinary guy, an ordinary businessman, could suddenly become this person who is willing to torture and kill the people he loves.
But I mean, that is interesting because there is, the thing with Poe is that, and what Roger Corman did with it is that it is about the kind of breaking down of the human mind, and that's really interesting. But that's what the Gothic is about for the most part. And what is interesting is that this was also something that we made sure to do with Wyvern Hill. It is a Gothic film. It's a modern Gothic film with the trappings of a modern setting, but it is a Gothic film. It's about gaslighting. It's about whether the thread that's in the walls is real. It's about whether it is in a mind. And I think where maybe we were they say trust your audience, and maybe where we were wrong is maybe we trusted them too much. We trusted that not giving an answer, people would go, oh, they don't give us an answer. Oh, I'll do a bit of thinking. And instead, for a lot of the audiences that we've reached in any case, and we've only reached American audiences thus far, and we'll see. But I think the first instinct is to say, oh, fuck these guys. I've just wasted an hour and 48 minutes of my fucking time because I wanted to know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
And I don't.
I honestly think, and I don't like drawing these sort of doing these sort of things like this, but I honestly think you will have a better reception with a lot of the English audiences, because I think that English audiences are used to that kind of. I could try and find words without making it sound like I'm being too. But I think they're more used to that kind of intellectual horror.
I don't know. I think because the problem is that I think there's plenty of people that would be willing to enjoy this movie in the US, but I think that the advertising campaign is stopping these people from even looking at that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong again, because I don't want people to watch this video and go, who's this guy think he is? He thinks his film is so good that nobody can dislike it. And I'm like, no, it's absolutely fine. There's loads of people that will not like it. There's people that I do respect that didn't like it, and that's fine. But the en masse rejection that we had, it comes from that. I think it's the marketing campaign, and that marketing campaign, unfortunately, is going to be the same in the UK.
And the thing about it is, as you were saying, I think the difference is if somebody can come to you and say, I don't like this film because, and they can give a well-structured argument as to why they don't think it was a good film, that's fine. If somebody just says, I thought this was rubbish because it didn't, I didn't get it, I didn't understand it. Well, that's, that doesn't make it a rubbish film. It just means you didn't understand it.
Yeah,
it's
to be fair, I mean, I think I got used to the beating now, so it's kind of like there's even some that I like now, some negative reviews that someone accused us of hating on old people, and her thing was, do not watch this movie if you like old people or good horror films. And I actually thought that was if it was me, I would put that review on the cover of the
I think what you'll find is this will even if initially you don't get the audience, I think you will over time, because I think it will become a cult thing. I think that's not a great way to build a legacy necessarily, but
the thing about that is I don't know, and there's a few people that said it. I mean, you said it multiple times, and Andy fucking hell, I forgot my friend's name. That's terrible. I've got to check. That. That's absolutely awful. Andy, I'm so sorry. I forgot your name, and that's really bad. Andy Piper. Yeah.
Right.
So my friend Andy Piper said the same thing. He said, look, this is probably going to be a cult movie. And my problem with that is I don't know that can happen anymore. Because films don't get a chance to exist that way. Like, essentially what's going to happen to this film is it's just going to get lost in an ocean of information on Amazon and on all the other streaming services. But it's always going to be available. Now, the way that cult movies become cult movies is they kind of disappear and then they come back to life, and they find an audience.
Discovering them, yeah.
And I don't know that we have any evidence that it still happens in the age of streaming and the age of the internet. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a strange thing. I think it's bound to.
I still do this thing of like I mean, every now and again I will go onto I don't know onto YouTube, and I'll just put like obscure 1980s horror film, and then see what comes up. And sometimes you find things you go, I don't ever remember hearing about this film.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is, I'm quite used to liking films that nobody else does, because I have that kind of thing. I like films that are a little bit odd or a little bit different.
That's the best way, I think specifically again with the internet that there is a tendency for that kind of weird group mentality where everybody's got to like and hate the same things. And you see it, for example, right now with Rob Zombie. Everybody's trashing Rob Zombie, and you go, seriously, give it a rest. I'm not a huge fan of Rob Zombie, but
No,
do you
no,
have to spend your days on the internet hating on Rob Zombie? Is that what you want to do with your life?
my
Is that
my big thing has always been, if you don't like a film, don't watch it. You
right?
don't, you know, or if you don't like a director, don't watch his films. It's not a big deal.
But
You
it's
know,
that massive group mentality, and I do think that it's a healthy thing to go, I don't care about that. I'll just do my
yeah.
thing, and you know.
Right, let's get away from the negativity and that kind of thing around it. Let's get on to where did the idea come from originally?
So Keith, the writer, Keith Temple, pretty much TV writer, wrote pretty much everything that you can think of on British TV, whether it's doctors or think about it. He probably wrote an episode or two, and he wrote one of the best episodes of the David Tennant Doctor Who, which is Planet of the Oods.
Okay, yeah.
Which is really, really good episode. And I met him on my course, and he got in touch and he said, "Oh, well, I've got a script and I'd like to see maybe if we can do it." And his dad was going through dementia, so that was a kind of a personal thing for him. And I read it and I said, "Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting idea."
Yeah.
My condition was that he would have to let me make it a little bit more horrific, because his script was a little on the drama side, and I wanted to make it a little bit more horrific. And he was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And we worked on it together. We had some very interesting conversations, surrounded by children in the McDonald's about stabbing people in the face and all sorts of things like that. So,
why not?
Yeah. And pretty much we had the script ready in December, the first draft of the script in December, and then we had the third draft done in January. And then we said, "All right, let's do this." And we found the money pretty quickly and we cast it. And then essentially COVID hit us and we all got locked down. So
yeah. Oh well, I'm glad you made it in the end.
yeah.
So where did you find the cast? Because as I say, I think they all did such a wonderful job, especially Pat. I think her portrayal is incredible.
I mean, Pat was great, and we got on to her by. I mean, it was weird. The rest of the cast, I mean, aside from Ellie and Eviana, well, let's do it in order. Essentially, Ellie and Eviana, they auditioned for Ben Manning and Pablo Rabel's The Last Twitch,
Right.
and they weren't successful. But Ben said, "Hang on, we had a couple of actress audition, and maybe you should look at them." And I looked at them and I said, "Yes, these two are fantastic." And I contacted them straight away, and they were game. They read the script and they were like, "Yeah, let's do this." And they were fantastic. Now for Pete and Mike and Ben and all these people, they're people that we've had around us doing our short films and working with other filmmakers, and so it kind of got a natural thing of finding people that you've worked with before. Part of the thing when you do such low budget movies is that you want to find talented people, but you also want to find people that you can trust.
Yeah.
It's strange, but it's true, because on such low money, if someone turns up and they can't deliver the goods, then basically you're stuck, because you have to spend the money that you don't have.
Yeah.
And you have to spend it on replacing somebody, which is absolutely impossible. Now with Pat, what happened was that we had another actress lined up, and things got a little bit complicated with agents and with the actress she wanted to do it, but at the same time she wasn't sure that she could, give it the time that it deserved. And so we ended up parting ways amicably. And so the problem is we were 2 months away from the shoot. We were all locked down. And I thought, okay, well, we need to replace our main actress. She's basically in every shot on that film. So I put an ad on Facebook, and it just went crazy. Part of it was because there's so few parts for ladies of a certain age.
Yes.
There's and it's very rarely leading roles at that, and we were offering a leading role, and we've had, I think, 70 or 80 responses from that, and some excellent self-tapes from people, some of which I've stayed in touch with, because I said, look, we need to work together. You're not right for this, but I know you'll be good for something else. And Pat was one of the last ones to actually apply, but first of all, she looked the part. And we'd already cast Eviana to play a kind of younger version of her. So we needed someone that looked a little bit like Eviana, so blue eyes. We had some very specific physical specifications. And the weird thing that happened with Pat is her self-tape was really good. And when she read the script, she said, oh, look, something is really strange here, is that it's a script about puppet, and you're going to shoot it in Hereford. And I don't remember how she led about this, but she went, the weird thing is, I used to work for the Jim Henson Company as a kind of, she did choreography and stuff like that. And she was the legs of Kermit in the Muppets Christmas Carol.
Wow.
So that's weird. And so that was one layer of, okay, so it's a film about puppet, and you worked with the Jim Henson Company. And the other thing was that she worked with Frank Oz.
Right.
And of course, Frank Oz was born in Hereford.
Yeah.
So all these things kind of got together, and it was like, okay, I think somehow, if we read the signs, I think it's supposed to be you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite incredible.
Yeah.
I think they all did it incredibly well. Really good
Yes.
job. And Pat was just amazing to watch. And one of the things that struck me, when I watched the film the first time, was, how have I not seen this woman in other things before? How have I not seen her so many times? Because she's so good.
Well, this is the thing that I was saying. It's very rare to have leading ladies that are of an age of 60 or 70, or it's a very rare thing. But even more in horror films.
Yeah,
we were quite worried when Relic got released pretty much at the same time as Wyvern Hill, and it's, oh god, here we go. And actually, I think we did something that they didn't do, which is to actually give the leading role to the older lady. I didn't need the younger lady to lead. I could lead with this older lady.
Yeah. Now, I must say, one of the things that struck us was apart from the lighting and the color and that kind of thing, the cinematography, that was fantastic. But it was just the editing and the pacing of the film I really liked, because I think it worked so well with the story. It kept the story flowing, even though there wasn't really a flow, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That, and I'm glad you noticed that, because that was the difficulty editing this. I mean, the first cut that we had was like 2.5 hours. It was crazy stuff. There was so much stuff, and we cut quite a lot of it. And yeah, it was about finding the right tone, the right pace, the right mood, hiding things, making sure that the thing that I was quite keen on is that people would watch it a couple of times, because there are things that once you'll pay a little bit of attention. So it's little things, little details. So for example, when Pat is talking about her dream about the Mr. Punch puppet and the nightmare, but underneath her husband's voice is Ben Manning's voice, who of course plays Maurice. When she comes down to see what the sound is about, and she finds that the washing up's been done. Well, if you look in the corner of the screen, you can actually see Mr. Punch standing in the kitchen. He's already there, and there's all sorts of little things like that that we wanted to hide in the thing. But thank you very much for the compliment on the editing, because a lot of the criticism that we've received goes on the pace and on the editing, it was very much a deliberate choice to keep a very slow moving film until then it snaps.
Well,
It snaps, and
it's got quite a slow build up, but it's for me it was interesting because it was, as it was going along, as I say, I wanted to keep watching because I wanted to know how this was going to end. I wanted to know where the story was going. And then I really wasn't expecting the end of it because it just kind of suddenly explodes into this kind of frenzy.
Yeah. Which is again what Alzheimer and dementia will do to people.
Yeah.
They, and I've seen it. My father-in-law died a few years ago, and it went through it, and it literally is a slow thing that you can see creeping in, and then all of a sudden one day they're just gone. And that always struck me as being very true.
And the other thing I liked about the end part, without giving too much away, the end part of it was the fact that it kind of didn't end, if you know what I mean. It didn't have a neatly tied up ending to the story. It just kind of like left you thinking, wow, that's, what the hell was going on? What's going to happen? But it doesn't need to have. And I think that sometimes people get bogged down with this whole thing. If they want loose ends tied up, they want a nice clean ending.
I think for me, if you're making a film about a character, and that's what this film is, clearly. I mean, yes, arguably we spend a bit of time with Connor and Jess, but they basically exist through her. They've got really no real existence outside of that. And in fact, again, massive credit to those two actors, because really they didn't have that much to work with, because it's never about them. It's about them in line with what Beth is going through. And where was I going with this? What was I talking about?
We were talking about the end not tying up.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So for me, when you're making a film about a character, it ends when their transformation is over.
Yeah.
There's no need to carry on for 10 minutes to explain whatever is going on. And so you've got Beth, and she's fine, and then she's progressively not fine, and then at the end she's not fine at all. And once she's completely lost her mind, that's it.
There's not really anything more to say.
No.
But the other thing is the fact that it's like I really like I got really into a TV series. I don't know if you ever saw it, called Fringe.
Yes.
And at the end of that, lots of people complained that it didn't have a nice, neat, tied up ending where there were so many loose ends and all that sort of thing. And I saw an interview with, oh God, I can't remember his name now, the guy who made it. Anyway, I saw an interview with him, and he said, well, no, there isn't. There are loose ends. There's not a nice, neat bow on the end of it, because there are loose ends in life.
Yeah.
Not everything gets tied up in a nice little package and goes into a nice little circle, and you say, well, that's that bit done. Because it could, 20 years later, you could still have this thing left from something that happened 20 years earlier that you still haven't,
Also, I think it's nice that if you're watching something, provided that the creative has left enough clues, I think it's nice to be told, look, you're a grown man, you're an intelligent person, figure it out,
The thing is, in real life, things don't get tied up nice and neatly. And so, if you're doing something, and to me, as you were saying, horror kind of reflects things in life and becomes an allegory for things in life. And so therefore it's not always going to have a nice, neat ending.
No.
No,
absolutely. Especially with things like dementia.
Oh yeah.
It's just, yeah.
But I really like that about it, because I kind of, there was this thing in the 80s and some in the 90s as well, where all horror films had to have this kind of nice, clean ending where everything worked out wonderfully in the end until the last second, and then there was a
that
twist
little hook at the end, yeah.
which left it open for there being possibly a sequel. And you
Mm.
kind of go, oh, why do we have to have that with every film? You know,
That's it though. That's what's working at the moment is a lot of franchise stuff, and you know, and that's fine.
I
I
just
like
like,
them as much as the next guy, but
oh yeah, but you know, I just like the fact that sometimes there are things you go, oh, okay, you know,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
It's not it's I mean that was the idea. The idea was to go, okay, well, let's play on the whole idea of confusion. And if you're going to play on confusion, but at the end you kind of lose your nerve and you go, well, actually, let's explain it all, then you're not playing on the idea of confusion. You're just
no, that's
teasing
right.
a little bit of confusion, but you're not actually going into confusion. Yeah.
But it's, I mean, I do genuinely love this film. I think it's great. It's also got an element about it of what they, I think nowadays they call folk horror.
Yes.
It has elements of that about it, with the whole Wyvern connection and
Yeah.
you know the local sort of things going on in, you know, the local history and that sort of stuff, which is quite interesting. What I like about it is that's there, but it's not something that overpowers anything else in the film. It kind of like touched on.
Yeah. It plays on two levels, and I've left it open like that again on purpose. It plays on the level of memory because it's linked to something that she remembers, but it's not very clear. And
Yeah.
it's got an emotional link in the sense that again, explaining my own movie, but that's okay. That the flashback that she finally gets when she understands actually who Eviana is actually a flashback of herself with her daughter looking at the mortified dragon. So
Yeah.
there's that emotional link.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then there was also, and that's where the whole idea of folk horror is kind of hidden underneath, is that the legend itself is about a little girl who finds a dragon and she kind of brings it home, and it ends up being very destructive. And that to me was like, and I think that was the same for Keith, I think that's the way you understood it, is that that's essentially Beth.
Yeah.
She gets caught up with something that she brings home, and then it becomes entirely destructive. And whether you want to see it as, oh, it is a serial killer, or it's a disease, then the story is the same. It doesn't really matter. It's the dragon. And in fact, again, we hit all sorts of stuff in the film. When Ben actually gets out of the bed at the end, there's all sorts of dragon sounds hidden in the picture. When he puts his hand on the bed, it sounds like a claw, and then he gets up and there's a roar, and so there's all that stuff hidden in the sound design as well to help.
Yeah.
But we wanted a film where you had to. Yeah, I'm making the effort of making the film. I want people to make the effort of trying to understand it.
The thing I would say, I mean, firstly, as a film, I think it's incredibly well made, especially for the amount of money that you spent on it. And it's well acted, it's well written, it's well directed. The cinematography is fantastic. The look of it is great. The sound is really good, and it works really well with everything. But even more than that, I was impressed with the fact that so often, and I have a great deal of respect for independent filmmakers.
Yeah.
So often people make films that are, and I've got no problem with this, but they make films that are effectively on one level. And that's not a bad thing, you know, because you can make a really good film that's like that. It's a story that runs from beginning to end on that level, and it works really well. But the thing that impressed me was the fact that you were making a film that had so many layers and so much going on within the storyline. And that, honestly, to be honest, it was something I hadn't come across at your level of independent filmmaking.
Thank you.
Because it's a very complex, a very time-consuming thing to do. And most people who are independent filmmakers on low budgets don't have the time to make films like that, because they don't have the money and the time to spend on doing all that. And I was,
I think, I think a lot of us as well is we, and not to go back into the negativity, we've talked about that, but then when you get a cold shower at the level that we got a cold shower, you think about it twice before you do something like that again,
Yeah.
And so a lot of us, I think, and there are people doing some really, really weird things in the indie scene,
The thing about it is getting, I like Spencer, the guy who does the Romford Horror Film Festival and Romford Film Festival. And one of the things I like about him is the fact that he is willing to take chances on films that aren't necessarily the sort of things that everybody else or every other film festival would show.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think it gives a lot of people time and screen time that they wouldn't necessarily get.
Yeah,
that's what I felt is the fact that I haven't had a chance to see a lot of the films that are more complex, and so having, when I sat and watched yours, I at the end of the film I actually just sat in the cinema for a while, because I just
I remember, because you were right in front of us. Yeah,
but I just sat there because I just I didn't know what to do, because it was like, so I don't want to just get up and walk out because it doesn't feel right. It was just so much to it. I just felt like I should sit there and just kind of like soak it in for a little while, if you like.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's like I said, people will hate it, people will love it. That's fine. We knew that was going to happen. But what I like is when it gives people something to think about. And I also like that not everybody got to the same conclusions, and that's fine. Now the problem with it is I've kind of cheated myself, because I've read the original script, so I know exactly what it's about and whether the killer is real or if he's not real, and so part of that was to cut away from the script the stuff that could give any of that away. But some people came up with some really interesting stuff. So, like, some people said, "Oh, well, the weird thing is I've noticed that people die every time Pat loses consciousness. So maybe it's Pat killing those people." And you go, "Okay, interesting."
Yeah.
People have noticed that each scene where we go into Jess and Connor, for example, the scene before ends on Pat's face. So is it in her mind?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things like that, and that's really interesting to me. I like that.
I mean, I think for me, one of the things I would say is, I mean, I don't know, we don't have a huge lot of people listening to or watching this podcast, but I would say to anybody who's watching this, or anybody who has seen this, who then goes on to watch Hollow, Wyvern Hill, whatever it's going to be called when you see it, don't look at any advertising, don't look at posters, just go and watch the film, because that's the thing. I went in there not really having much of an idea of what this film was going to be about or what it was, and I was absolutely blown away by it. And I think that's the thing, is that going in with a completely open mind, you kind of just enjoy the film and you watch the film and take it in more.
And it is by the way, I mean, I shouldn't say that probably, but it is on Pirate Bay, so knock yourselves out. We are after people who like this film, so
that's what I can't understand. You get loads of negative press, but it's being pirated.
Yeah, so well, that's worse, because that means you're getting shut on basically by people who aren't even giving you their dime. It's crazy stuff. It's like, hang on a minute, we just wanted to make a little bit of money from that film, and at the moment, not a penny, So
yeah, well, I mean, I hope that things get better when you get more of a distribution, in different countries and different.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah.
Once you get it out there and that, I really enjoyed it, and I hope that it does well. Now, what's next? What's the future hold?
Well, That's always the complicated question. We have a few scripts in the pipeline. One of which is a fairly much more expensive kind of film, not that expensive, under £100,000, but it's a post-apocalyptic samurai movie set in Britain. So
Right.
a fairly ambitious thing about a wild girl who gets picked up by a man who used to be a beast, and they have to together survive the world that's waiting for them outside, essentially. And they get embroiled with a sect that wants to use that girl as a system of reproduction, essentially.
Okay.
So it's a very strange, surreal, ambitious film with, I mean, that's not even the half of it, and I probably summed it up very badly, but there's cannibals in there. There's the horsemen of the apocalypse on bikes, and
so you decided
and...
after Wyvern Hill to go really simplistic.
Well, but that's the thing. I think, again, the problem is, of course, you can, everybody goes, why do you read the negative reviews and all that? But the fact is that they will impact what we do next. And doing it's not an expensive movie because it's quite cheap still, but doing something that big after we first of all not have seen any money yet, and secondly we got that massive negative press. It now seems kind of unrealistic to go into that straight away. So the thing that we got now is we have a script called Derelict, and it's based on a true crime that happened in my hometown, and it's essentially a very, very brutal, cold, true crime revenge drama.
Cool.
And the script is done, and everyone who's read it has said, wow, that's really good and very bleak. And this one would cost only about £25,000. So actually, we're going to have a meeting this week with Andy Piper, one of my producers, and see if we are either carrying on looking for private funds or if we do launch a crowdfunding campaign for it.
Okay.
And try and find £25,000.
Cool. Well, I wish you all the best with that, and I wish you all the best with the other post-apocalyptic. I look forward to seeing that because that sounds incredible, to be honest.
I mean, it is, and we've done. Mark Stewart, who's done my poster for Wyvern Hill, has done so many designs for it, and it's absolutely beautiful. And we've worked on it for now almost a year and a half, and it's kind of heartbreaking to go, okay, let's just put it on the side for now. We're not forgetting it, we're not giving up, but we're going, okay, let's just put it on the side for now, and let's see what happens, and let's do something not necessarily simpler, because actually Derelict is quite a tricky, complicated thing. And because it's less of a horror film, because it's more of a drama, then we have to be top notch on absolutely everything. The trick with drama is you have absolutely nowhere to hide. If it's ridiculous, it does not work. Whereas with horror and all that, if something is a little bit on the dodgy side, you disguise it with a very nice camera move or some colors or whatever, and you can kind of slip it through. But it's drama, it gets complicated. So it's not a lesser film in that sense, but because it's a modern setting, it's contemporary, it's kind of a much cheaper deal to put together. There's only about 4 or 5 characters, so we can work that and get it to the best that it can be on a very low amount of money.
Well, no, I wish you all the best with both of them, and I look forward to seeing more stuff from you. And
thank you.
I hope, as I say, that Wyvern Hill picks up and brings you some kind of return, because it definitely should.
So do I. But I think at that stage we it's better for our mental health to go, all right, let's
Have you got a release? Have you got a release date for this country at all?
No.
No. Okay. Well, the distributor's not interested in doing that now.
Let's just say, that as far as distribution goes, I will think twice next time. And if I had anything to say with budding filmmakers who want to go into feature film and they want to get distributed, is be very careful, because it's basically the world of indie distribution is basically an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give the name of the distributor we work with, and to be honest, they've been very decent as such. But the whole thing of being an indie is you're not protected by anybody.
No.
So you sign contracts and you be given returns and oh, we spend that amount and we've spent that amount, and you have nothing to protect you, nobody to protect you. There's no structure to protect you. Your film is basically in the hands of someone you have to trust.
Yeah.
And the truth is, and I'm not saying that's the case for the people we're working with right now, but the truth is 90% of these people that distribute indie films are not trustworthy. They're after a quick buck for themselves. Yeah. And the only people that don't make money out of the indie distribution are the indie filmmakers. And that's the sad truth.
Well, as I say, I hope you see some kind of return from it soon, and I hope that it gets distributed, because I think more people need to see it, because I think that what you've got is only a very small snapshot of what people would really think of it.
I think so.
So, well, thank you very much, Jonathan, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. That was awesome.
It's been great talking to you. To everybody out there, keep an eye out for Hollow, Wyvern Hill, whatever it's going to be called when it's distributed. Pirate Bay. Yeah, I mean, you can listen to the two reviews. I reviewed this twice already on here. Once from the horror film festival. Once we watched it and we did a review on it time. But
thank you again for doing that. That's really great.
No. It was my pleasure. I mean, I loved watching the film again. It was just. It lost a little bit watching it on the small screen rather than on the big screen, but it was still really good to watch. It really was.
I mean, that Romford showing was awesome. It's still the best showing we've had. The sound. The sound was so loud it was making the screen ripple. It was very good.
It was very good. Yeah. Okay. So keep an eye out for Hollow, Wyvern Hill. Keep an eye out for future films from Jonathan, and I'll put links up to Jonathan's YouTube channels and social media so you can keep an eye on what's going on. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
The Sciforror Film Podcast.